Rick Hughes, PhD student in Anglo-Saxon philology at the University of Cambridge, spent much time reflecting on time, only to arrive at the conclusion that time does not exist. And if it does not exist, how can one waste it on useless conjecture? For something that does not exist, Rick felt its pressure on a daily basis, if there is such a thing as a day. In his studies there was so much for him to learn and so little he had achieved. The mystery of darkness intrigued him, and especially what some historians label the Dark Ages. They were dark because a long time ago, there it was again, time putting its huge hoofprint into his muddied desire for knowledge, lived and died people who would today be amazed at what we do not know about things that were so plain to them. Rick sighed and heaved himself out of his padded armchair. He glimpsed himself in the mirror, drew near and inspected a rogue silver-grey hair, the only one among the thick chestnut waves crowning his head. He took it between finger and thumb, steeled himself, and pulled it out by the root. Voila! A tangible sign of time passing before his eyes. We all age, and he was now 26, including our ancestors before us and our descendants if we are fated to create them. He inspected the skin of his reflected face, pleased at the negative response. No wrinkles yet. In the uncertainty of his present, one thing lurked for sure. If he lingered, indulging himself with further reflections on time, he would be late, whatever that might mean, for an encounter with his friend Gareth Marshall, which the latter had described as pressing, whatever that might mean. Rick hesitated in front of the neo-Gothic pit building on Jesus Lane. Not for the first time he wondered why Gary, who had disappeared after graduation, had contacted him with such urgency. What could be so important as to make his carefree friend so insistent on the phone? Knowing him, he wouldn't show up on time, but it would be good to see him after a whole year had slipped by. A besotted couple clinging to each other, she teetering on the precarious towering heels of shoes that seemed all straps, stumbled through the doors of the hidden rooms. Momentarily, the anguished notes of a jazz sax reached Rick from the basement club and snapped him out of his reverie. With renewed determination, he opened the door and strode down the stairs to join a lively atmosphere. He was wrong about Gary's punctuality. He spotted him hunched over a steaming drink contained in a plain glass cup. The blonde hair fell away to either side of his face as he looked up to reveal a cheerful grin when he recognized his friend. Gary hadn't changed. The same deep-set, piercing and pale blue eyes sat under heavy eyebrows. He could do with a haircut. His blonde mop of hair made him appear like an ageing student, out of place among this smarter generation, or a throwback to the 70s. "Hiya, Rick. How you doing?" The greeting came thickly, snuffling. "Got a cold?" "Yeah, all that tramping around in the windswept fenlands, the piss-pot of the world." "What's that you're drinking? The Gary I know should be wrapping himself around a pint of beer or something stronger. They have a fine selection of single malts here, you know." "Carhagna citrina. Ginger in it. As I said, a stinker of a cold." He fumbled in the pocket of his jeans and pulled out a tissue to underline his assertion. "You should try one. They're very good." This came out muffled before being interrupted by ferocious nose-blowing. "No thanks, I'll stick to beer," Rick said, nudging past a group of lads blocking his route to the bar. The sax began to filter into his consciousness, mellow, melodic, jousting with the drums and bass, an interacting trio applying the philosophy of less is more. He found himself nodding to the beat as he waited his turn at the bustling counter, where he chose a bottle of craft beer. He carried the cold glass, which was dripping condensation onto his trouser leg, back to where his former coursemate sat feeling sorry for himself.